Good evening, everyone. Hello, can you all hear me all right? Great, thank you. Well, welcome to our first in-person State of McKinleyville event since before the pandemic. I'm so pleased to see you all here. Yes, let's give a round of applause for that. Yeah. It's always a great feeling to just be in a room with our community members, with folks that care about what's going on around us. So my name is Jessie Miles. I'm the Executive Director at the McKinleyville Chamber of Commerce. And like I said, I'm just so pleased to be here. First off, I just want to do a few thank yous. Thank you to my McKinleyville Chamber of Commerce board members and ambassadors. If you are here, can you raise your hand? Everybody look around. Give them a huge round of applause. All the great things that are happening through the McKinleyville Chamber would not be able to happen without these amazing folks that volunteer their time to bring it all together. Next, I would like to thank our presenters this evening and moderators. So I'll start with Jim Ritter, who is our moderator this evening. And then thank you to Director Adair, Supervisor Madrone, Sheriff Hansel, and Lieutenant McCall. We really appreciate you all taking your time to be out here. First, I just want to do a quick little introduction about the McKinleyville Chamber, for those of you who might not be familiar with it. We are a member-based organization. We are here really to help the businesses in our community come together and thrive. And it's things like this, workshops, forums, being in communication with our community leaders, and bringing us all together that helps those things happen. We're really excited. We have a great lineup of bringing things back and back to more normal-ish for 2023. That's to include things like this forum. There'll be some other forums and workshops that have more of a hyper-focus on specific skills for businesses, educational workshops, etc. If you have some ideas for something that you would like to see happen, please let us know. We're also excited to start planning all of our big community events that many of you have come to look forward to, such as Pony Express Days, Corks, Forks, and Cakes, and Music in the Park. So be on the lookout for lots of great information about those. Next, I'll go ahead and let Jim come up and talk a little bit about how this evening's event will run. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you again, Jessie. I'm Jim Ritter with the College of the Redwoods and a 40-year resident of McKinleyville. So it's a pleasure to be with you here this evening. As most of you know, when you decided to come this evening, tonight is about hearing from three of our community leaders, three departments in our community, and then most importantly, allowing our guests to hear your questions. So the way our evening is going to be formatted is we're going to ask our three guests to come up in turn, and they'll each have 15 minutes to make a presentation to share highlights about what they're working on in support of McKinleyville, and to give you an overview about Humboldt County plans for 2023. And then I'll give them about a 3-minute heads up when their 15 minutes is almost over, and then we'll in turn go to our next guests down the line. After the 15 minutes each, we will go to your questions. Again, that's the way Jessie and the board has structured this, is that be the focus of tonight. So what we would encourage you to do is, as you're hearing the presentations, if you have questions or questions that you came with, please use the note cards that you see on the seats and go ahead and write those down. And then just note to the board members and ambassadors that are here, raise your hand or whatever, and you can pass the question cards to them, and they will bring those questions forward. And when we get to the Q&A, I will read them out loud on the mic so that everybody can hear those. They can be for questions, of course, for all three areas, departments, or for an individual guest that's here. But we really encourage you to think about what's important to you and ask questions accordingly. So before we get started, any questions from the floor about process stuff? Okay, seeing none, I'd love to welcome Director Scott Adair and welcome him on up to the podium for his 15-minute presentation. Thank you.
I appreciate in advance the 3-minute warning I still prefer to use a wristwatch, and the battery went out on it. And so this says I have about 65 minutes. So my name is Scott Adair. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the County of Humboldt. Just quick point of clarification, I'm a division head, not a department head. So I report directly to our County Administrative Officer, and who in turn reports to the Board of Supervisors. The Office of Economic Development essentially has been established to implement and facilitate the board's strategic framework as it relates to economic development and community development initiatives, as well as implement and facilitate the county's comprehensive economic development strategy, which is actually a required document for our community to have in order to qualify for certain federal funding opportunities. So what I'd like to do is just begin this conversation about where we're at today. And I think this will play a vital role providing context to all of you before you hear from the department heads and from our elected officials about what's happening in your community. It's important as a starting place to know what we're working with and what we have to deal with. And presently, as I'm sure many of you are already aware and probably are already feeling in the pocketbook, inflation is hitting many communities hard. There are some good metrics that we're monitoring that as economic developers, we feel hopeful about concerning the direction that we're heading in as a community. Some of those positive metrics or KPIs, key performance indicators that we monitor as an agency include unemployment. Unemployment numbers are presently at a 4-year low, sitting at approximately 3.7%. This number is reflective of pre-pandemic levels and is something to be proud of. It does not, however, take into consideration labor force participation rate, which is different of unemployment, and we can get into that a little bit later if I go over my 65 minutes. We're also seeing a rise in wages. The mean wage has increased more than 19% from where the mean wage was in 2019. So with unemployment down and wages on the rise, one would imagine that there's an abundance of prosperity occurring in the community. However, that's not what we're seeing. There continues to be a reduction in consumer activity across all retail sectors. Although there are more people employed and there are higher wages which are being brought home, there is less purchasing activity on goods and services. And of course, your government is funded in great part through consumer activity and through the real retail sales tax generation, which is created, which funds critical programs and services. So why is that? Why do we have an increase in wages, decrease in unemployment, but less spending? That's where inflation comes in, and we can talk a little bit about inflation. I didn't bring a PowerPoint presentation, but if I had a chart that I could share with you, you would see that over the last 2 years, the inflation has nearly been equal to inflation over a prior 10-year period. In just 2 years, we've seen over 14 percentage points of inflation within the economy. And this inflation has an impact on us as consumers in many different ways. One, the Federal Reserve, whose greatest resource and tool to curb inflation is to increase interest rates, although that is a tool that can be used to discourage inflationary activity and to curb inflation. Increasing interest rates has an adverse impact or can have an adverse impact on consumers. Higher interest rates means that it's more difficult to borrow. It's more difficult to acquire capital, especially for groups or individuals or persons who historically face challenges in accessing capital. Therefore, it can make it too burdensome or cost prohibitive to secure additional capital or funding through borrowing activity. This has a direct impact on the housing market. According to the California Association of Realtors, home values across the state, across the nation actually, and in Humboldt County are down. from a high of where they were in July of 2022. I'm sure everyone was watching Zillow very closely, amazed at the values of their home increasing, and now we've seen consecutive dips over the last 6 months. We've seen that values have decreased nearly 7%. This report is as of November. There could be some modifications there. And we're also seeing a decrease in the amount of actual sales activity and transactions activity. Homeowners are waiting on the sidelines. They're waiting for values to recover. And so there's less inventory available. And when there's less inventory available, there's less competition, and it makes it difficult for borrowers to compete. It definitely makes a buyer or a seller's market, and that's only compounded by the difficulties that are created due to the cost of capital increasing as interest rates rise. California Housing Market Forecast Report, their 2023 report, predicts that there will be a 7.2% drop in family home sale activity this year, and that we will see an additional decline in our home values of up to 9%. The rental market is also feeling the impacts of inflation. As inflation increases and as market rates increase, it's becoming more clear that county residents must make more than minimum wage, on average, that is. There's a lot of circumstantial context behind that. But on average, if you had an individual person who was single, living on their own, and they didn't have any other income or subsidies, would have to make more than $21 an hour to afford what is now the average base rental price for a one-bedroom unit in Humboldt County. And that's due in part largely because of the change in cost of goods and services. As costs of necessary goods and services increase, it erodes the ability to pay for additional housing. The Consumer Price Index, or referred to as the CPI, which is a measurement of the prices paid by consumers for typical basket of goods or services, continues to match data with the Bureau of Labor Statistics to reflect what the actual consumer price is. And we can see that although there was a slight recovery in December of 0.5%, and that could have been because of holiday sales activity, that in general, cost of consumer goods has increased over 7% over the last year, and we've seen some key goods and services like utility costs, energy costs, food costs, medical costs increase more than 10%. Amongst the rise in consumer goods and services, we would have to include the price of fuel. Humboldt County is actually in the top tier of the pricing structure for fuel in the entire state of California. Our average regular price of fuel as of the writing of this report is $4.85 a gallon. This is roughly 12 to 15% higher depending on which communities you're comparing against for other averages for similar markets, and is 50% higher than the national average. So as consumers start spending more on required and necessary commodities, services, childcare, housing, fuel, medical care, it begins to erode the average person's ability to put away savings. And the personal savings rate, which is another metric, which is tracked by the federal and local state governments, has decreased to a current low of 2.3%, and the all-time low since 2005 was 2.15%. So we're nearly at a record-breaking low for the amount of savings that consumers are putting away into savings accounts. And in contrast, the savings rate right before the pandemic was 9%. So consumers are putting less into their savings accounts as they're spending more on goods and services. This accounts for, we believe, one of the reasons why non-essential expenditures are down. Consumers are less likely to shop at their local, boutique stores, give their patronage to the local coffee shop, or eat out at a restaurant as often is they are redirecting their funds to necessary goods and services. And this also has been reflected by the number of restaurant closures that have occurred over the last 12 months in the county. I know it sounds like I just keep giving bad news. We're going to get to some good news, don't worry. Healthcare costs are up 5%. The U.S. employers and healthcare experts expect healthcare costs to increase between 2020 and 2040 by almost 50%. So expect your premiums to increase. All this said, the Consumer Confidence Index, which reflects consumer attitudes and opinions about where the market is headed, continues to maintain a relatively steady line at approximately 110 points. It's a measurement of time between now and back in the 1980s when the index was created. This is an improvement of nearly 6 points from where we were at the prior year, but it's still low enough that it's within sort of recessionary territory. We are seeing across the nation major employers such as Amazon, Twitter, and just announced this week, Microsoft, who are laying off thousands of employees, in some cases more than 10,000 employees. So the ripple effects of inflation is being felt across the entire country, and yet, interestingly enough, there are over 10 million available jobs currently, as of the most recent report, in the United States which need to be filled. And if you look at unemployment numbers, there's a gap of about 4 million workers who are not applying for those jobs. So we have
3 minutes left, please.
3 minutes. So let's just sort of go into the silver lining. It does appear, the thing about economists is for every economist who says on one hand, you have an economist who says, well, on the other hand, and you look at the think tanks and what they're putting out, and you can get quite an array of opinions about the matter. And that's because economics is generally based on looking in arrears at the data which we can collect and assess. So we're always looking in the rearview window. It does appear at a national level that we are likely headed toward a recession, if not already in a recession. And many of the experts, Goldman Sachs and others, their forecasting shows that the recession could last between 1 and 2 years. And yet, silver lining, Humboldt County is on the precipice of great prosperity. I'm sure that you're paying attention to the news and all of the potential projects which are coming down the pipeline for our community. Aquaculture projects, wind-related projects, projects related to undersea fiber cable network cables which are landing in Humboldt County, Cal Poly and the allocation of funding from the governor's office there. We're tracking over a 10-year period over a $7 billion investment in our community from all of these different sources and these different activities. And that's not something to really be shy about when in terms of talking about the opportunity that lies before us. So how do we accommodate all of this opportunity? I'm getting into my wrap up here. How do we accommodate all of this opportunity? How are we going to lean into all these various projects which will be needed to sustain us during recession or potential recession and to create abundant prosperity after recession? We do know that by the end of 2030, more than 3,000 workers in our own community will age out of the workforce. The projects which are coming through the pipeline, which are on the horizon for us, require approximately 4,000 jobs. We actually have a net loss there of 7,000 workers if we look at the number of personnel who are going to be aging out of the workforce. So we've got some work to do in terms of preparing the workforce and laborers to meet the demand of these various projects which are coming to our community. And the most important thing that we can be thinking about now is how do we house those workers? How do we educate them? How do we provide them with childcare and necessary medical care? How do we keep them safe? This tells me, and many economists believe in this same theory, that some of the basic fundamental practices of government, like our sheriff, keeping our streets safe, and the programs that through public safety are designed to keep neighborhoods and residents safe, the work that the Board of Supervisors is doing on enhancing housing, creating more housing opportunities, these are the types of things that we need to continue to focus on. Our agency this last year held 12 meetings in various communities, one in this room, with members of the public and citizens to talk about what is it that you want from your local government, and what is it that you need to feel safe and secure in your home, in your career, in your neighborhood. And we have learned something which is very fundamental to economic development, and that is that good communities, safe communities, communities that have good quality of life, quality of place, and offer services and amenities for their residents are communities where economic development then begins to happen organically and is not something that has to be forced or enticed and brought to the table. So I think that's where I would end. I thank everyone for your time, and very excited to hear what our supervisor and our sheriff and others have to say, and any questions that you might have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Adair. And now I would like to welcome our supervisor, Supervisor Steve Madrone, 5th District Supervisor, to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good to see you all tonight. How y'all doing? Yeah, nice to be out again, starting to move forward from COVID and all these other things. So, state of McKinleyville. I think it's pretty good, but does that mean there are no problems? No, I think we all know there are a lot of problems, right? Some of them include, as Scott was saying, housing, huge issue. But, McKinleyville has done its share in many ways, right, with creating housing. We can do more, but we need to also have all the communities stepping up and helping with that. Homelessness, that's a huge issue still all over our county, all over the country. Our roads are a mess, right? But I'm not going to talk about those three things directly. I suspect there might be some questions that might come in on some of those issues tonight. And I could certainly share with you some of the details about those. But what I wanted to do was, first of all, thank you all for your efforts to take care of each other in these emergencies that we've just been through, from the earthquake to the windstorms. I've been here 50 years. I think I'm a newcomer on many levels, but I don't ever remember cyclones lining up. First of all, we call them cyclones again now, right? But lining up one after another, and we're sitting in our houses and they say 30 to 50 miles, and it's 50 to 70, 80 miles an hour, right? So I think we're all kind of quaking in our shoes a little bit when things rattle and shake and move, and it's gotten us all a little bit on edge. I know I have been. But thank you for the work to look out for your neighbors, check in on each other, and help each other, sharing generators or whatever other resources that might be available to help each other. So it's been trying times, but as people always say, that does bring community together, doesn't it? And so thank you for your efforts to help each other. I also think we're doing good because we have the best community service district in the state of California, right? McKinleyville CSD. And as you know, they provide you with your sewer, your water, parks, incredible efforts by all the park staff to get new grants for the BMX park and so many other things. And they just do a phenomenal job of running those services, including some streetlight services here in the community. So thank you, MCSD. Dennis Mayo and many of the other board members have been serving for a long time, and I thank them for that service. Another organization we have here in McKinleyville is the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee, or fondly called MCMAC. And we have some of the members of that here tonight. I want to thank them for their service as well. Lisa Dugan, and I'm not sure if I saw anybody else, but Scott Bender is an alternate to that. And then we also have Maya Conrad here. So thank you for your service there. And the McMac is sort of filling this void that existed because we're still unincorporated here in McKinleyville, right? And yet we're the third largest city, but in the summer we're the second largest city when the students are gone, right? And so we are large. We're 17,000 plus residents here in McKinleyville. And so we're very much like a city, but we're not. So it's unincorporated, and the county helps as best we can. But without the MCSD, and without McMac, we would be in a lot worse shape. So what does McMac do? They try to fill in the holes as best they can on all those things that the service district can't do, and things that the county has spread so thin in all the unincorporated areas that we don't do that well. And the McMac has stepped up, and they are a group of 8 members that serve this community as volunteers. And there are 2 members from the CSD. One is Pat Gaspari, the general manager for the community service district. Thank you, Pat. And then I think it is Greg Rossini is the other member from the CSD, and Scott Bender, an alternate. But we have many wonderful members there, and they're tackling many issues and many projects in the community. So I'm going to talk in my brief period here about incorporation, town center ordinances, circulation, and Vista Point Park. I'm going to try to cover this pretty quickly. There's a lot there, but I think we can get that done. So, you know, for many, many years, people have said, why isn't it incorporated? Why are we still an unincorporated community? And I'm certainly not saying you should incorporate, but one of the commitments I made was that we would get the data for you all to understand what are the revenues and what are the expenses that are currently happening in McKinleyville. The last time this was studied was about 22 years ago. That came out with a study working with Humboldt State University professors and students. And they took a look at it, and the outcome of that study was that 22 years ago, it was financially feasible considering a 50-50 split of revenues between the county and the city. So when you incorporate, the county has to hold on to some revenues to pay for the DA and its services, the Department of Health and Human Services, probation, and other types of things, right? So it may or may not be a 50-50 split, but it's called revenue neutrality. In other words, in order to incorporate, we can't hurt the county in the process. So it was looked at, and it was deemed possible, but folks didn't really want to move forward at that time. And I understand that, but the community has grown, and in the last 20-some years, there is absolutely an increase in revenues. But up until recently, we couldn't really track those revenues for McKinleyville specific. So our board recently committed money to be able to put some software together to be able to track those revenues. And we have formed a partnership with Cal Poly Humboldt again to update that study from 22 years ago and provide you as community members all the data about total revenues, total expenses in the community coming in currently. And then we'll have a town hall, we'll bring the MCSD, the McMac, and you as the community members and have a discussion about what those things mean. If it looks feasible, then, and the community wants to proceed, then there's a process through the Local Agency Formation Commission, or LAFCO, whereby we do a detailed feasibility analysis. And if that then determines that it's absolutely feasible, then it would go to the voters. And you will decide whether or not you want to become a city with your own mayor, your own council, your own planning department, or whatever, or the CSD can actually expand some of its services and continue to function as well. So there's a number of combinations that can occur. But the bottom line is, whenever this discussion comes out, you'll hear, oh, it'll raise our taxes. Well, not necessarily so, and only if you vote to raise your taxes. So that's important to understand. But the bottom line is, we need the data, have the conversation, and then we can make informed decisions about whether or not we should proceed with looking at it more deeply. And then ultimately, it will be up to you to decide if you want to become a new city or not. So I thank Cal Poly Humboldt for partnering in this, and the McMac has set up a subcommittee that they were meeting today. I was able to join their meeting, and they are looking at these details and trying to bring the information together, right? We're not saying we should or we shouldn't, just bring the data together. Town center ordinance. We've been working on that for a long time. It was part of the McKinleyville Community Plan back in 2001, 22 years ago. We made a commitment to this community to work on a town center ordinance. Now, we are so lucky to have the owner of that property is Ann Pearson. And she has always had this vision of having a town center that would have a character beyond just Central Avenue and what currently exists. A place that would be pedestrian friendly, with stores, maybe some apartments, big open space with wetlands enhancement and such. So if you're interested in that, join in at the MCMAC meetings, because they've been considering this issue for about 3 years, and they're getting close to making some final decisions on a draft ordinance that would help set in place the sideboards that would help create this vision of a town center. So really exciting stuff there. And recently the county allocated $200,000 to do the EIR for the town center ordinance process. So what will happen is the MCMAC will make its recommendations to the county planning department. The EIR will get completed, the draft EIR. There'll be public input all along the way. And then the planning commission will make a decision on that ordinance. And then it would ultimately go to the board of supervisors, because there's general plan amendments and zoning changes that would occur. So please join in on that process. It's really a wonderful thing that will come to this community. And again, thank you, Ann Pearson, for your vision and your commitment to helping make that happen. Circulation, we all know circulation is a huge issue in McKinleyville. You know, we got Central and we got McKinleyville Avenue, and it was supposed to dovetail into the South School Road roundabout. And everybody's like, what happened? Well, it was part of that subdivision there, and that subdivision has lapsed. And the cost of building this, I think, is part of why that subdivision lapsed. So until that subdivision happens, it may not get connected. But even if it did, we have a lot of schools along McKinleyville Avenue. So it would have been nice if we probably put an on-ramp and off-ramp in Hiller Road, but too late to do that. So we've got to revisit this circulation issue here in McKinleyville and think about what are the ways, you know, people are saying people are going 45, 50 miles an hour down Central, you know, and stuff. And we don't want to make it difficult to get home or anywhere, but can we calm the traffic a little bit while still allowing big trailers and trucks to make their turns and do all the different things they need to do? So those issues we're probably going to be delving into more deeply beyond the town center, you know, because that's a community-wide issue in McKinleyville. We do have a multimodal study that, thanks once again to some of the MCMAP members working with the county and Redwood Community Action Agency, have put together a survey and a plan for how we can improve circulation between Arcata and McKinleyville and make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists to be able to make that movement happen back and forth. So that is getting into the final phases, and that will be coming out soon as well. And then also, we did some studies on transit for McKinleyville. We do have Humboldt Transit, but it's kind of just sort of a commuter thing going through, which really doesn't work that well for the people from the north trying to get to Arcata and Eureka. And it doesn't really serve the community completely, right? So we're gonna start having on-demand van services in McKinleyville, funded by Humboldt Transit Authority, that will be more of an on-demand system. And it won't be like Dial-A-Ride where you have to schedule a day or two ahead. It'll be on demand. And as we densify McKinleyville with the town center ordinance and other kinds of things, other types of transit services will be available and possible. So look forward to that. Last item, I think I only have, 3 minutes left?
Yeah, 3-4 minutes.
3-4 minutes, great, thank you. The last item was Vista Point Park. When we think about McKinleyville's economy, which Scott, thank you for all that data and everything else, people keep wondering, why do we keep losing all these beautiful boutique mom and pop businesses? Some of you may have been some of those business owners. You've invested your money, you start up, and 2 years later, you're folding up your doors, right? A lot of that is definitely shopping online. The good news there is that even if you're shopping on Amazon, we now get the sales tax, right? The law changed a couple years ago, and the sales tax goes to the point of origin of the sale. So that's some good news. But how do we support local small businesses and create more opportunities for jobs here in McKinleyville rather than having to get in our cars, go to Arcata, Eureka to work, right? How do we do that? Well, we need to bring in new income into the community. Well, we are so lucky to have this Vista Point facility out here on Highway 101, but it's dysfunctional. You can't even get into it if you're going north. And you come over that little bluff there, and suddenly there's the ocean and Trinidad, and that's called $1 million view. It's also called an economic engine, right? Because people want to get off. You see them pulled over on the highway taking pictures in the shoulder, but in order to get there, you got to be coming south. Well, most of the money is coming from the Bay Area as it comes north, right? How do we get those visitors to pull off and spend time and money in our community? And when you're on vacation, don't you visit the boutique stores and the coffee shops and the rest of it, right? So if we want to support small business, We changed the Vista Point into what I call Vista Point Park. On the south side of the Caltrans facility, we own the parcel. The county already owns it. And so what we do is we change it so you get off at Airport Road, whether you're going north or south, and you go into the Vista Point, and we'd have a visitor center there on the county property, right next to the airport. And we would have maybe a bicycle campground on the coastal trail and a picnic area. And once we pull people off the highway, they're gonna go, wow, let's spend the night. How many motels are there in McKinleyville? One, right? And the Airport Business Park, Steve Mosier says, when we do the Vista Point Park, his business park will fill out with more hotels and more things with Cal Poly Humboldt, Light Tech and other things. That will pull money off the highway. Pretty soon they're going, wow, there's a coastal trail, there's beaches, there's rivers to raft. Like we all know, that's why we live here, right? And they're gonna want to plan a vacation for a week or whatever it might be. That's gonna bring people into town that's gonna spend money at small businesses and improve our economic stability and interest and create more local jobs. So I'm super excited about that. And we've been making progress on that project with the airport. We had to go through all kinds of different things with checking out our property boundaries, this, that, whatever. But we already own that property and we can make that happen. So that, I think, just about wraps it up. And look forward to your questions. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor Madrone. Just a reminder, we have looks like about 5 cards with great questions already here, but if you have a question, please go ahead and put that on the card and raise your hand and one of our volunteers will bring it up. And then that allows us to read those on the microphone so everybody can hear them after our next presentation. And next here, we are happy to welcome our Sheriff's Department and representing us tonight is, of course, Sheriff Hansel and also Lieutenant McCall. So thank you guys for being here very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you. Can I take this off there?
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead. There you go.
Perfect. I hate the podiums. You guys don't mind me coming out there and reaching out and touching you, right? No? Lisa? All right.
Still get in front of the speaker.
Yeah, we'll get in front of the speaker. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come here. And we're going to do a couple things as a check-in and welcome everyone, and also to introduce our new lieutenant and talk about our priorities here in McKinleyville. You know, our sheriff's mission is to protect and serve this community through compassion and accountability. Okay, that's going to build public trust, and that is our mission. And our vision is to be the safest community here in rural Northern California. That's our vision. And it takes not just law enforcement, but it takes a community partnership in order to make that all happen. And so by you being here, it's an investment for our community. It shows me that you guys are all interested in making sure that our community is safe, because every time I speak with people, they're concerned. They're concerned about crime, they're concerned about drugs, and they're concerned about mental illness. None of which seems to be getting better. And so I want you guys to know that we are committed here. Even though it seems like our back's against the wall, there's still things that we can do. One of the things that I'm going to continue to really advocate for is accountability. Accountability is key when it comes to anything that comes to law enforcement. And a part of that accountability is having a strong DA's office. And I'm going to call her out here. Stacy Eads, our brand new elected DA, is in the back. So I want everyone to acknowledge her. Thank you, Stacy, for being here. I appreciate it. But it's a part of that public safety family and a public safety. And so we are committed to that. You know, it's been about 8 years since we passed Measure Z. And so this community is what really got Measure Z on the ballot, because we saw that there was a lack of police services in Northern Humboldt when there was only 3 deputies working at any given time for this whole area. And sometimes when there's an incident in Willow Creek, there's no deputies here at all to cover McKinleyville when there was a hot call on the east side of the county. And so thanks to Measure Z, we were able to staff 30+ deputies throughout the county. And though I want to say, you know, it has helped, we're still Overall, we're 16 deputies down at this point in time, and recruitment and retention has been a struggle. But I want to thank Supervisor Madrone and the Board of Supervisors. They did pass a contract for our deputy sheriffs. They are making a good wage. We have not had the issues with retention since we just got a raise and a new contract. So thank you, Supervisor Madrone. I really do appreciate it. It has made a difference. So thank you, sir. You know, one of the things that I want to do in my leadership is making sure that I promote the right people that have the community's mind, okay, that have a servant's heart. Being a servant leader is really, really important. And so that's why I chose Lieutenant McCall to lead the North area. Many of you know Lieutenant Miller. He was our previous lieutenant up here. I reassigned him to be our administrative lieutenant in charge of training. And so he is now at main station and left this void here. And Lieutenant McCall is the guy that I chose to come up here and to lead it. Josh is his first name, is very personable. He will call you back, he will listen, and he will give you some great advice about how we can partner here in the community. So I'd like to have Josh come up here and talk a little bit about our stats, talk a little bit about our patrol function and what we do here in McKinleyville, and then I'll wrap it up here with what we're going to be doing in the future.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna steal this. I just got it muted. Give it a shot. Oh,
Test. There you go.
I thought it was planned. Maybe it's better if you can't hear me. Thank you, Sheriff. As Sheriff Hansel said, I'm Josh McCall. Was promoted to lieutenant the end of July, and with that was tasked with taking over for Lieutenant Miller for the North Area Command. I previously worked McKinleyville around 2016, 2017. I was a sergeant up here at that time, the one sergeant assigned to the McKinleyville area. So I do have some history up here, but have been enjoying getting reacquainted with the community and the local agencies and businesses and citizens of the area. So I'll go in briefly on just talking a little bit about that, like the sheriff talked about with recruitment, retention, and staffing, and having bodies in this area of deputies working. There's been definite improvements currently for the North area. There are 4 dedicated sergeants that are based out of the McKinleyville office, covering 4 of the 5 shifts under our schedule. With that, there are 14 deputies that are assigned to the McKinleyville area. Obviously, that includes responding to areas, Trinidad, or those outlying areas, but that does not include coverage for, say, Willow Creek, which has its own deputies that are supervised out of here, but that doesn't include their staffing. So those are deputies assigned just to the greater McKinleyville area for 24-hour, 7-day-a-week coverage. With that, our K-9 program at the department has been developing, and 2 of the 3 K-9 deputies that we have are actually assigned out of the McKinleyville area. We also have a dedicated community service officer who handles things like cold property crimes, vehicle abatement, those types of tasks. And while they share some duties throughout the county, we have a community service officer that is dedicated 40 hours a week to primarily the McKinleyville area. Getting into this a little bit, I know it's nice to hear numbers, and usually all the board meetings and stuff that I attend for the various communities and contract cities, people want to hear stats and obviously like to see numbers. So our analyst threw some numbers together. I just had her put 2021 and 2022 in there just to kind of give people an idea of what the call volumes look like for 2022 compared to last year. You can see total incidences slightly up, but relatively the same. Some arrests are down a little bit, but primarily numbers are pretty consistent across the last 2 years with the types of crimes. I won't delve she explained to me how to use it, and I already forgot. Thanks, Jesse. So I'm not going to delve too deep into the numbers. Like I said, there's just some comparisons there, showing some charts to give you kind of an idea of how things have ranged. But I will jet past this just to bring up the point, as the sheriff asked me to talk about some of the things going on for the community. And while we're obviously focusing on the McKinleyville area, this is stuff that goes throughout the county. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because I get asked a lot about certain crimes happening in certain areas of the community. So I want to point out that a lot of this similar information is available on our Citizens RIMS page. So if you go to the Sheriff's Office website, there's a tab on there called Citizen RIMS. You click on that tab and you can bring up various information for the area, whatever area you want to look at. You can break it down by the types of crimes, date range, all those things are in there, and I find it's a pretty helpful tool. It answers a lot of those types of questions that community members and business members and stuff are routinely asking for that type of information. There's other stuff on there that can be helpful to the agency and the community, like you can register your webcams if you have a Ring camera or something like that on your house or your business. You can go on there and register that, so if we have some type of a crime that occurs in that area, we can pull up a list and say, okay, we know, instead of going door to door and asking, and sometimes it's easy to see them on the side of a house or business, sometimes it's not. That helps us to go through and identify those locations where we can possibly pull surveillance footage and that types of thing to help assist in our investigations. So there's just a lot of good tools on there. So if you're not familiar with it, I strongly urge everybody to get on there and take a peek at how that works and a lot of the information that can be pulled from that. Another thing that I would like to bring up is our MIST program, which is a mobile intervention and service team. It's coordinated with the Department of Health and Human Services through mental health with the county. And it's been being developed. It consists of some case managers, and just recently onboarded were a couple of clinicians. So what happens with that is those folks will come out and they ride along with deputies, and the McKinleyville area was kind of a pilot area for that project. It's starting to expand now into the Eureka area and some of the other outlying areas of the community, but McKinleyville was the initial kind of focus for that program. So those case managers come out, they ride with deputies and now clinicians, and as the sheriff said, we obviously deal with a lot of mental health related things, be it from just mental health issues or things that are also compounded by drug and alcohol use and that type of stuff. And while the deputies wear many hats, a lot of times obviously we're not well versed in all the things that go along with a lot of that mental health stuff. And having them there with us, it gives us a resource to put people in touch with in the community that are in crisis or experiencing other things to help get them services and help get them not only just mental health services, but other various services that are provided through DHHS and other various agencies of the county, and puts them in touch with that, and then gets them a better contact and also helps free up the deputy to deal with other crimes and stuff that are occurring. McKinleyville still has an active scope, so the sheriff's citizens on patrol, so they're a big help with doing vacation checks and things like helping out on parade routes and that type of stuff. So that's a definite resource that is nice to have. It's still, I think, probably the most active currently is still in the McKinleyville area.
3 minutes.
Alrighty, thank you. So yeah, and I would just mirror last that the sheriff is made it clear, and it's through his admin team in the office and all of our expectation that community support and community service is our goal. Customer service is our goal. I know customer service is something that's often, associated with things like food service or retail, but having a supportive community is a necessity for us to be able to do our job. And in turn, the community needs to know that their law enforcement professionals support them and are trying to do what they can to make the community the safest place we all live and work in. So I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and spending your time here to show your support, and close out with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. Thank you. I really have a lot of faith in Josh and what he's going to do and lead the team here. Just finishing up here, it's been a crazy last couple of years. I don't know if anyone's noticed. Since 2019, public safety power shutoffs, pandemics, we've had fires, floods, winter storms, and earthquakes, of course. So one of the many hats I wear is the Director of Office of Emergency Services here at the county. And what we want to do is making sure we are prepared for the next one. Because guess what? The next one is coming. And just like Supervisor Madrone said, okay? So a couple things in the very, very back that I've left. Shaky Ground. It's a great publication that a lot of people partnered with. It has a lot of great information. Please grab it. Make sure you're prepared for the next earthquake. Having a personal emergency plan is so important. If you don't have one for your home or business, please get one. And I think if anything, we know that, but it's time to prepare. A lot of people ask, how do you know when there's an emergency? How do you get notified of it? You know, besides the ground shaking, okay? Is we have Humboldt Alert set up here, and we also have Zone Haven set up, and that information's in the back. We have stickers and magnets about knowing your zone, but you can sign up for all this information by visiting our website, humboldtsheriff.org, and it'll have links to our website. Partnerships are everything with us. Okay, we have Sheriff Citizens on Patrol, we have Scope, we also have Neighborhood Watch. In McKinleyville, we have 16 neighborhood watches. Ginger Campbell is awesome. If you know her, she's willing to come in to do a business watch, neighborhood watch, and so she is a pretty amazing person. We have these packets put together, and these are in the back. These are just really, really well done and about how you can change things around your house and prepare yourself to not be a victim of crime. Crime prevention is one of the basic keys that we do here, so that information is there. So really look at partnering with us with trying to prevent crime. A couple things I want to leave you with. If you have a crime to report and it's an in-progress crime, please call 911. It's okay to call 911, okay? That's the time to call it. You don't have to wait for shots fired. You don't have to wait for, a bad traffic accident. There's a traffic accident. If there is a crime, someone just stole something, it just happened, call 911. That's the time to do it. It's the direct line to get there. Some people, are just afraid. Go ahead and do that. We will walk you through it. It's our dispatcher's job to walk you through that, and it's A-okay. If you just want to report a cold crime, okay, something that occurred overnight, someone broke your window, someone stole something out of your car, please do that. A lot of times people say, well, I just don't want to bother law enforcement or whatnot, okay? If there's potential for us to find the suspect, please call us. If there's no possibility that we can find the suspect, let's say you have a lawn ornament that just walked off, someone stole it, and you have no idea what happened, what did it, but it's gone. You can still report that online. Please do that. Online reporting will get you a case number. It will track your stolen property. If we recover it, we can bring it back to you. But 445-7251 is our main number, okay? If there's a crime, please call that. Some people say, oh, I should call the McKinleyville station, which is okay, but it really isn't the best option because the McKinleyville station is only staffed Monday through Friday. And sometimes Margaret likes to take a day off, okay? And so for consistency's sake, please call 445-7251 and report the crime. You can always stop by the station here, right across the parking lot, and talk with Margaret, talk with our lieutenant who will be there from time to time, and as well as our sergeants and our deputies. Let's see. I think that's about it. One of the things that we are going to continue to focus on is, like I said before, drugs. Fentanyl overdoses. Our latest number is 60 overdoses this year for fentanyl alone. That's out of 71 total overdose deaths that we've had. So 60 overdose deaths this year. Last year we had 34, and now 60. What is it going to be next year? And we still have 8 pending tox screens. So that number is likely going up, probably closer, to that upper end, 67, 68. So it is a problem. It's something we're going to continue to focus on. And so we will be pushing out more information on that, but I just definitely wanted to put that stat out there. Okay, we're available for questions, and I just thank you all for your time. Thank you, Sharon.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for these great questions, and thanks again to our guests. So we have quite a few questions here, and the chamber is not going to edit these at all. We just sorted them to sort of have different topics and different orders here, but they're not edited. We'll try and go right up until 7:30 asking questions. Many of them are for all three of our guests here, and some might be specific. So first question for all three of you is, what is your working relationship with MCSD? And what do you see as the future needs for the McKinleyville Community Services District? And we can just, why don't we start on this end, Director Adair, and then we'll just go down the list and then we'll mix it up going to future questions.
Turn on the mic, or is it already up? You're good. There we go.
And I assume we should make our responses brief.
What's that?
We should make our responses brief and to the
Yes, because we have lots of great questions.
For our agency, the Office of Economic Development, we've had some limited contact with CSDs throughout the county, usually on a needs basis, if there's some sort of support that they require of our agency. Most of our interagency collaboration is with your chamber and other business or trade associations or business or trade districts whose membership comprises of businesses and business owners.
Thank you.
Well, I think the county's relationship with the CSD is excellent. It wasn't always that way. There are many folks in the community and the CSD that have helped improve that, like Dennis Mayo and others that sit on that board. We now have a monthly meeting where the general manager and the chair of the MCSD, along with the chair of the MCMAC and myself, meet monthly before the CSD meeting and the MCMAC meeting, so that we can share with each other upcoming issues, various important updates and things like that. But it can always be better, and trying to work on that is a priority. Also, we have now initiated an annual meeting where the MCSD and the MCMAC meet jointly, because they really have a lot of common concerns in the community, and they each have different roles. So I think it's a good relationship, but one can always work to make it even better.
Well, our relationship with CSD is good because they're our landlord, so we don't want to get kicked out. So we're gonna try to keep that nice and strong, open lines of communication, and make sure our rent payment comes through every month, which is 0. So, but there's definitely an agreement there. Obviously, we've worked together, and I think our number one need here, I think countywide, is housing. And so we hope to, because our deputies would love to live here more, and so we would love to have more McKinleyville-based deputies if there's more houses to be purchased here. We definitely could have more deputies local. So we definitely want to promote that.
Thank you. Next question. You can decide, everybody can comment, or if you feel not so, that's fine too. This is a suggestion. Can the county get funding or a bond to create a modern mental health facility and program and substance abuse treatment in our jail?
In our jail, yes. So right now we actually have mental health treatment in our jail facility. So we have a couple different options. Number one, we have county mental health that is there assigned. Our numbers of mental health, I don't need to tell you all this, you see it, that virtually, I think it's about 75–80% of our current inmates seek some kind of mental health treatment. And that number has just been escalating over the last several years. What we've also seen is the incompetent to stand trial inmates has gone sky high. There's been times in our correctional facility that we've had 20+ inmates that have been deemed incompetent to stand trial. And so the state has recognized this. And so the state has diverted money to create jail-based competency treatment centers within local facilities. We applied for this grant, we received this grant, and we have 8 beds now in our correctional facility that are steered towards restoring competency for those that have been deemed incompetent. And so that's a key element, because we've had inmates that suffered from severe mental illness that have languished in our correctional facility for months because Napa State Hospital was full, and that was unacceptable. And so now we have the opportunity to restore competency for those that we can. There's some that we have to send because they're severe, but they have room in Napa and other hospitals throughout the state, because there's county jails that are opened up this way. So we have seen that. There's also drug treatment. We also have medication-assisted treatment programs within the facility. That's, they have their Suboxone and other things that they can continue to take while they're there to make sure that they're able to curb their addictions while they're in custody. And then we have a warm handoff out of custody with Aegis and other Department of Public Health, by perceiving those medicines outside of custody. So that's our goal. No matter what is outside of custody, we should have the same program in custody, and we're getting.
Yeah, I would say that. Is this one on? Yep. I would say that the sheriff, the deputies, and the correctional officers do an amazing job, as Sheriff Hansel was just stated. But ultimately, the jails and the ER room are not really the best place to be treating mental health issues. And so as a county, going beyond services at the jail, we really need to do a lot better with our services. We own the entire parking lot across from the courthouse. And what do we use it for? Parking, right? And there's the public health building there too. But we're looking at our facilities master plan and asking questions like, should we take that lot and build a 4 or 5 story structure and bring all the DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services programs together on the one block with parking underneath, so that we wouldn't even lose the parking, right? And imagine the efficiencies that would create in terms of staffing, clients getting access. Right now, all those services are spread out all over Eureka. It's really difficult for clients to get services in that way. Additionally, we own the entire block up where the Semper Virens Hospital is, and the planning department is right next door. We own the entire block. So we do some shifting around, and then we rebuild a brand new Semper Virens Hospital. Not with 16 beds, but with 50 beds. And maybe a dozen juvenile beds, because otherwise they're being sent down to Santa Rosa, right? At the worst times, they're thinking of suicide, and they have to leave the family. Nobody, how do you get to Santa Rosa and take care of them? So trying to figure out how we do a better job using our own assets, these blocks that we already own, and the monies are out there to start building new facilities. We can better manage this so that the ERs and the nurses are not dealing with this. Because when you go to the hospital, as overwhelmed as they are with COVID, they will tell you that the biggest overload is psychiatric patients. And so really, while they do a fantastic job, we as a county really need to do a better job of creating better and more facilities that are modern and work better for staff and clients. So that's something we're working on.
Thank you. This next question is directed to Director Adair and Supervisor Madrone. What actions is the county taking to promote business development in the McKinleyville area that will provide employment in the near future?
Want to start with that? You bet.
Okay. There are a number of ways to promote economic development that will result or yield in job creation for the community. Believe it or not, it's been very well studied and researched that economic gardening, that's the term that's used, i.e. helping existing businesses in a community to grow and to add capacity and add positions, creates more job growth than does bringing in the next big outside developer, big project. We do have a lot of big projects on the horizon, some exciting projects which could create thousands of jobs for the county, but we're also very focused on the existing small to mid-sized employers and working with them to identify what they need for sustainable growth and expansion. And that's in part of the county's comprehensive economic development strategy, laying out action items for how we can focus on external opportunities, which may be coming into the community, but also focusing on providing aid and support to our existing businesses. Because that localized growth is where you often see more new jobs created for community members. And we do continue to vet out economic opportunities that, you know, come across our agency. Oftentimes, depending on the nature of it, we might include Supervisor Madrone in a meeting. And one thing that we're very careful to convey when we're talking with someone who does have a proposed project is you know, that it somehow be harmonious with what the needs and interests are of the community. And I think for the most part, you know, different businesses we've talked to have been pretty receptive to that. But I can share, and then I'll turn it over to Supervisor Madrone. There's a great deal of interest in our community in general now from the outside. I've had, I think, more calls from agencies out of Washington, D.C. Over the last year than I think I've had ever in my career. And that's because of all of the growth and opportunity that's on the horizon for our community. And we're just working to be well equipped enough to capture that so that we can bring some of those opportunities to fruition. If anyone wants like more specific details, like tell me about a project you're working on, you feel free to talk to me afterwards or reach out to me at my office.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. You know, Scott and his team of coworkers do an amazing job on so many different economic development opportunities, so thank you for that. I already mentioned the Vista Point Park, as I think that's a real key, you know, because we've always been a bedroom community, and bedroom communities have a hard time supporting small businesses. It's just the nature of where things have gone. So how do we change that? I really believe that Vista Point Park is a key to that. And as Steve Mosier, the owner of the Airport Business Park, said, that would lead to a filling out of his business park with more hotels. In fact, back in 2007, there were 2 more hotels proposed for that project area, but then the recession happened in 2008. Additionally, the airport's growing. There's good and bad news about that. If you live nearby and you hear the noise, maybe you're not so happy about it, but you know, it really is changing. And here we are, McKinleyville has the airport, right? And it may not be called the McKinleyville Airport, but it is the McKinleyville Airport. And so those things, along with the town center vision and circulation improvements, traffic calming in certain areas, all of those things I think will lead to a more business-friendly environment where people want to get out of their cars and walk, bicycle, and support local small businesses, including that outside income. So I absolutely believe that that's key to helping that happen in McKinleyville.
Thank you. Next question is directed to the Sheriff's Department and Supervisor Madrone. What is being done? What plans are there for dealing with the increased homeless population in McKinleyville? Local business has dealt with an increase of crime and vandalism over the past several years. Customers are sometimes afraid to shop.
That's a good question. It's a lot of, it's been on our minds because we do see some vagrancy, we do see some chronic homelessness. And, you know, one thing that we do is we offer a lot of services here in the county in general. And like I said from the very beginning, accountability is key. And everyone comes down to a decision that everyone makes. And so it's not against the law to be homeless. It is not. But when you violate the rights of another, if you disturb the peace or break the law, there should be some accountability. And that's where we want to draw the line. And so we will continue to enforce the law. And if someone who happens to be homeless does violate the law, then there needs to be some accountability on that end of things. And there is some things that we want to do, and that's on the horizon. One is the county is currently working on a proposal and a plan to create an area to be like a one-stop shop for a person that's identified as being a potential someone who struggles with drug addiction, homelessness, who's chronically an issue with law enforcement. We get lots of calls. They may even be a minor drunk in public. To bring them to a location that could be a sobering area that's outside of a jail facility, that also offers services, whether it's mental health services, whether it be housing services or social services, and a one-stop shop for someone. It may be something to where we see this from time to time. We see someone that just walks in from the street and they are down on their luck and they don't know where to go. And so we point them to the rescue mission. We point them to Betty Ching. We point them to Teen Challenge. We point them to some of the other services that are out there. And they don't want to do some of those services, but they may get plugged in somewhere else. But to bring them somewhere where they can hang out during the day, where they can get some help and some assistance when they're ready for it. Because no one can make someone get help. It's only when they are ready for it that they will receive that help. And so we have to have those avenues that are there, and we're going to continue to work on it.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. I think your staff do an amazing job of trying to manage this. I was noticing some of the stats earlier about welfare checks and other, interactions on the streets and things like that. It's really become a very big portion of the public safety issue, and none of us are going to solve the homelessness issue overnight or even very quickly. But we can make incremental change in that, and I think we are, and we have some other ideas of how to move forward on that. In an ideal world, you help people with addiction if they're ready for that help and ready to move forward, or mental health issues, and many folks are dealing with what they call dual diagnosis. It's not bad people, right? As Sheriff said, it's not a crime. There are many people who ended up addicted because they broke their arm and they got a prescription for an opioid or some Vicodin, and before they knew it, they became addicted and ran out of the prescription, and then their lives started going downhill. So I think we all know, every one of our families, if not in our family or friends of our family, are connected with folks that are struggling with these issues. So it comes very close to heart for all of us. It takes a lot of empathy and a lot of patience and a lot of commitment to really deal with these issues. But ultimately, if we can get people the help that they need and get them into housing, that's really the long-term solution, but there's not enough housing. So what do you do in the short term? What kind of services can we increase and help with? I want to put out a thank you for those in the community that are really helping in a big way. And there are many unsung heroes in this community that are working on these things, but some of the really important players are Joyful Healer with their Saturday meals and other things, and they were bringing in the shower van, once a week, so people could just get a little decency and get clean. I mean, can you even imagine not having a home and being in the woods and all those kinds of things? Grace Good Shepherd has been a long participant in helping, along with Johnny Calkins, who goes out to the camps and brings in garbage bags, right, on a weekly basis. So he works with these communities along with other people that just come in and go, hey, here's some bags. If you'll bring it together and get it out here to the street, I'll haul them away. Thank you, Johnny, for that. He's an amazing, dedicated person. The Family Resource Center here in McKinleyville does what they can as well, but there's still a huge gap. We need to do better. I always like to say there's sort of three things that we need to have happen in order to really start dealing with homelessness or the lack of housing in a big way. And one of them is funding. Well, guess what? There's a lot of new funding coming down for helping with these programs, more than has ever been around, whether it's in the jail or in the county and other places. The second thing is partners, like Betty Chin, like Arcata House Partnership, and many others that are working to try and provide transitional housing and services. But the third one is the most difficult, and that's location. Where are you going to put these services? Nobody wants them anywhere near them, right? And so if we continue to have that feeling or sense, how are we going to solve these problems? I can't solve it. I can't just go out and make it happen. But what I'd like to say to people is that, well, do you already have homelessness living near your neighborhood? And wherever there's woods in McKinleyville, there are people living there. trying to survive. And because they're trying to survive, they end up committing other crimes sometimes. Not all of them. There are many of them that are actually really not committing crimes and just struggling with survival, a shower or some food, whatever. But so if you already have that in your neighborhood, wouldn't it be better if we came up with a safe parking lot or a sanctioned camp where we could bring services and have on-site, management, where we could actually start bringing services to people? It's impossible to bring services to people out in the woods, right? Would that be better? It might be in your neighborhood, but I would think it would be better than the unsanctioned situations that are actually happening now. But that's something we're, as a community, going to need to struggle with, placing facilities and services in places. But if they're already there and we make it better, I think that's an improvement. But a lot of it is not just, giving a handout. It's giving people a hand up, figuring out a way to help those that are ready to accept the help to move forward with their lives. And I think we can do a lot better. And it is going to take a lot of empathy and consideration. But I believe we have that within us. So that's my pitch there. So.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Supervisor Madrone and Director Adair. What is next for the wind turbine projects, and do you think the Yurok tribe was treated fairly?
There's quite a bit of work yet that still needs to be done before we'll see a wind project actually come to fruition. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management concluded a lease auction of 2 areas located approximately 21 miles off of our coastline, for which 2 developers, one based out of Germany, one out of Copenhagen, submitted the top winning bids for a cumulative total of over $330 million. And that's just for the right to develop the wind area. The investment for actual assembly and deployment of the turbines themselves and all of the components, that will be another significant capital investment. The investment in the port alone is in the hundreds of millions of dollars just to be prepared for that project. The process entails, we still have 3 to 4 years of research and analysis which has to be performed before you will see components at the port facility be assembled. Likely it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 years before you would actually see production of the wind turbines. There will be a lot of work in advance. You'll see a lot of oceanic related activity, a lot of vessel and potentially helio activity as there are different surveys and studies being performed in the ocean. This wind project is a federal project and it's occurring in federal waters. And I only share that because it's important, I think, for us to have the context that there's some big federal and state agencies who are proponents of the project and moving the project forward. And the county really truly does have limited purview over the project, if at all, only over certain aspects of the project, which are those activities which will be occurring on land. As far as, are the Yurok being treated fairly within that, as part of the emerging wind industry? I don't know. I think that what I've heard from developers and other wind partners who have visited the community, that there does seem to be sincere and genuine interest in engaging with tribal partners. There has been an organization called the Core Hub, which is really a community benefit network of other various partner agencies. They've been working to try to engage tribal communities and tribal partners and to be a voice for or provide a platform for that community in discussions with developers. Although I've also certainly heard as well that there are some communities who don't feel represented by Core Hub. So this is part of the community process behind a project of this magnitude, any project that is this large, is trying to properly engage the community, all aspects of the community, all populations and persons, so that those voices are represented in the process. I can say that there are a number of meetings, industry meetings that are happening related to wind. County is looking to build a website that can serve as a repository of resources for wind. There are several agencies and ongoing meetings and different dialogue happening. A lot of agencies are moving very rapidly on this front and working on wind, and we're still trying to just put together some stakeholder and shareholder mapping. Who is working on what direction are they moving in, who has what purview, so that we can eliminate some redundancy, but we can improve communication. But it's still years away. I know there's a lot of discussion about it. It's been highlighted in the media. There have been a lot of news articles written about it, but there's still quite a bit of time to negotiate with the developers what that engagement with our community and our neighborhoods will look like.
Great, thank you, Scott, for all those details. So we currently run our electrical needs here in Humboldt County with fracked natural gas from the Dakotas. That's pretty much how it's done when the nuclear plant got shut down. And I think we would all agree that we really need to make a change. And that's going to be solar, it's going to be wind. Those are absolutely very important and exciting opportunities to happen. I mean, the solar tax credits were starting to go down. Hopefully they'll come back up. I mean, there's a reason people are putting panels on their roof, right? Because it makes economic sense with the tax credits and such. I think we also learned a lot of lessons from the 2 wind projects that were proposed down on the Bear River Ridge, which was really WEOT, not UROC. I think all of the tribes feel like this time around they are being reached out to. There's still a lot of need for conversation around the fisheries, around other things. But I think we're doing a better job this time of engaging the tribes early and often, but we can always do better. With Terragen that was proposed on the Bear River Ridge, there were a couple of things that ultimately led to it.